Dad, did you know that Nami in the last episode of One Piece, live action adaptation, and David in his animated movie of the same name, they have something in common?
Really? What was that?
I was genuinely surprised at how the David movie ended and how Nami handled her final confrontation with Arlong. Do you remember how both those events played out in the movie and episode?
Well, yeah, there was a big confrontation between Nami and Arlong. A big throwdown, big fight. Uh, the last fight scene with David, well, David really didn't have a lot to do with it, and quite honestly.
He had something special to do with it, but it was unusual. He didn't actually win the fight physically. And while you may remember that there was indeed a big fight, a big throwdown between Nami and Luffy's crew and Arlong and his crew, Nami actually did not throw a punch or swing her stick at Arlong either. In fact, I don't think she actually swung it at any of his technical crew members.
You'll have to bring me up to speed on that. It's been a while since I seen that last fight.
Well, if you recall, Nami snuck in with Luffy to grab back the map to the Grand Line. He saw the chains, she gave a sad explanation for them, and then Arlong came in and he tried to make Nami feel guilty and break her down. And Luffy basically told her to get out of there, and she did, and Luffy just kept Arlong from chasing her. She actually ran away and left Arlong for Luffy to handle.
Oh, that's right. Then Luffy handled him not by beating Arlong, but basically tearing down all of Arlong's stuff that he had in his room.
Yeah, he tore down the entire room. He tore down the entire building on top of him. And yeah, that was, that was pretty creative and unusual in its own right. But I was actually initially disappointed in how Nami did not actually fight physically Arlong. I mean, I really wanted her to give him a beatdown after everything he put her through. But once I kind of stepped back and looked at it all, I realized that was the only way to finish her story arc.
So, how do you think that differs in how the movie David ended?
Well, actually, it has a surprising similarity. See, I fully expected David to have to fight a powerful villain at the end of his movie, too. And I knew he would win it with God's help, but I fully expected him having to physically fight someone. I mean, he fought Goliath, he threw the stone and swung and they didn't show this in the movie exactly, but he swung the sword that killed Goliath. And I knew he wasn't going to physically really confront Saul because I read the book. But I thought, that there would be Philistines or, they were playing up the Amalekites. And I know there were a lot of bloody battles David was involved in the book. So I fully expected to have a physical fight with a big baddie of some kind. I wasn't sure who at the end of the movie. And that really didn't happen either. Neither he or Nami ended up in like the climax of the story, what you might call, he really didn't fight. I don't really think he fought much at all in the third. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think David fought much in the third act at all physically. It was a different storyline than that, a different story arc, like Nami had a different story arc. And both story arcs did not actually need them to physically fight in the third act, which is really unusual. I mean, can you think of many other stories, especially of like action-y movies that didn't have the main character fight a villain, or in Nami's case, didn't have a character really physically confront their particular personal villain?
No, I can't think of any. I think of the Marvel movies. All the heroes fought their enemies in the last battles to end the movie. Same thing with the DC universe. They always fought the main baddie to the very end, and that was basically after that fight was the end of the movie.
Star Wars is the same too, isn't it? I mean, those three major ones.
Star Wars basically ended. The very first one ended with the destruction of the Death Star. Almost all movies that I can think of ended with a final battle where the hero took out the main guy or the main villain.
When I think of the original trilogy, I mostly think of Luke taking off Darth Vader's mechanical hand. I'm not going to lie, which is a very physical confrontation. I mean, sure, he turned around and said he wouldn't fight after that, but not before causing major damage.
So, how do you feel about both Nami and David not fighting their main protagonist at the end of their movies? Do you think that helped or hurt the film?
Well, like I said, it did disappoint me for Nami at first because I really wanted Arlong to be punished, and I really kind of wanted her to punish him. But I realized that Nami's character arc, it started with her doing everything by herself, including fighting. If we go all the way back to the first episode, first she conned those two pirates out of their boat onto hers alone, and then she had a confrontation with the guy whose uniform she stole and the girl who caught her in the fortress alone before Luffy showed up. And then she kind of had to cover for Luffy for a bit there when they met Axe Hand Morgan. I'm going to call it. I can't remember his rank, but Axe Hand Morgan. And so she was doing a lot alone. Her entire character arc, in the middle of her story, more or less, she learns how to work more with people with some hiccups. But at the very end, she does what she's actually most afraid of and completely lets a friend, someone she has a personal emotional connection with, help her on their own. It's an unusual character arc, but it was right for her. So can you think of how that's the same and different from David's, since you saw the movie with me not too long ago? Took me to it.
Oh, in Nami's case, I think through her entire appearances in the movie was character growth. She went from being absolutely loner to slowly but surely beginning to trust her new companions. In the David movie, I think from the very beginning, David showed that he trusted God, and in the very end of it, he trusted God so much that he allowed himself to give himself into the hands of the Amalekites, knowing that God would either rescue him or let him come to his end.
Very true. In fact, I had actually heard something that, like, it surprised me initially. It's like, oh, of course, is that one of the creators of the David movie said he went through a testing arc. I think that's different from what you might call a character growth arc. I have to look up the technicalities of that terminology later. But yeah, you're right. With Nami, she did grow as a character. Well, David's already fairly sterling character was tested a great deal throughout the movie, including in that end scene where he came out really well. Do you want to know the actual movie that did come to my mind in the third act? Watching David do that in the movie theater,
Well,
I did come up with one other movie, animated movie, oddly enough, where that happened in.
I'm afraid to ask, but what was it?
Yeah, you might as well be. It was A Bug's Life.
A Bug's Life.
Flick gets the stuffing. I mean, he gets beaten so bad he gets bug bruises on his exoskeleton by Hopper the grasshopper, and then he manages to get out that Hopper and the other grasshoppers, which from an earlier scene we actually knew. He is correct that the ants outnumber them 100 to 1, and they better never realize that. So, kind of like with David, David's seeing something really brave. Flick says something really brave, and then basically an army of those with David and Flick rise up and sweep away the outnumbered, even if tougher looking bad guys. And I was like, I can't believe that David, the biblical animated movie, reminds me of the plot of A Bug's Life. But it's still really good.
One of the few things I remember about the Bug's Life was the end of the villain where he got ate by a bird. So.
Yeah! For the Amalekites, I don't think that was their end. But
No,
yeah.
from what I hear, it was worse. but that's for another story at another time.
Okay. But anyway, but yeah, it was odd to me, odd but beautiful. I think both David and Nami's arcs here. And it's odd because they really don't seem that much alike. Nami starts off really cynical loner, and David from the very beginning is shown to be a beautiful leader, and yet both of their perfect endings for their characters were not fighting for themselves, but letting other people do it.
Do you think there's anything left for if there was going to be another David movie or in the next season of the show with Nami for further character development?
in both source materials, there's a lot to work with. The question for David is how much PG rated stuff there is to work with. If I'm gonna be honest, if you wanted to let the movies franchise grow with the audience, I guess they could eventually get there, but their brand would change significantly if we covered some of the major events of David's life, both actually before when that movie would have ended, before he became king, and after. There's just not much PG related stuff to work with.
Where do you think Nami's character is going from here?
I'm going to be honest. I think she's going to take a back seat in season 2. I mean, I can't really call the first season Nami season. It might be to me because she's my favorite character. But I mean, Zoro also had a good character arc, kind of similar, of learning to work with and trust Luffy, although he got there a lot sooner than Nami. They're going to introduce new characters, so I think she's going to take a back seat. She'll still be significantly involved. She'll still be their navigator. I mean, my favorite line of Luffy in that last episode, I can't remember exactly what Arlong said, but Luffy was like, maybe, but you made our navigator cry. And she's always going to be the navigator of the crew, so she will be involved. She may even have episodes, but they're going to add new episodes. I honestly think Usopp has a lot of growing to do when it comes to not being a coward. He made some significant strides, but I still think he has a long way to go. I wouldn't be surprised if his character has to keep growing. I think they're going to introduce Luffy's brother, maybe, in season 2. It should be interesting. Yeah, it would be his adopted brother. But anyway, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. We'll see. I don't know if season 2 can really live up to season 1. And David, yeah, I just don't know if I want some of the other events of David's life to be animated into a kids' movie. But yeah, I think maybe the Amazon show. I think they actually made a good choice to basically be adult content from the beginning if you really want to tell the entire arc of David's story.
Yeah, the Bible is what it is. That's what makes it a great book because it has the good, the bad, and sometimes the very ugly. But this is human life. This is human nature.
What I think is funny is that I think a lot of people go to church in their childhood because their parents make them. And then once they're able to make their own choices, they stop and they assume that all the material that their adult teachers taught them is basically the gist of it. And I'm like, guys, did you really want us to explain what David did for Saul to earn his first wife to you guys in 3rd grade or even 6th grade? That's just, we had to make some choices here. If you didn't keep up with the material and graduate to the next level, I'm sorry, that's partially on you.
Yeah, there's more to the story of David than simply him killing Goliath and then living happily ever after. It didn't quite happen that way.
And you know what? I admire the movie for only keeping the Goliath part in the first act and showing at least some of the sadness and depth in the rest of it. It was a real testing arc for David, which I may cover in the next video. Thank you for helping me with this one. I hope even though we let Nami share the spotlight with David, it was still a worthy end to her character arc. If I cannot to get YouTube to accept my use of some good clips to illustrate this video, I am very sorry in advance. Please also blame YouTube.
Yeah.
And Netflix.
Well, here's hoping. Well, Dad Man out.